All right, can you hear me? Awesome. All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for all attending. It's 6:05 on February 2nd of 2026, and we're calling the Master Plan Review Committee to order. Let's begin with a prayer. Mr. Tharp, can you lead us in a prayer tonight? Mr. Burgess, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. And Mr. Burgess, do you mind also doing roll, please?
All right. Mr. Johnson, Ms. Petrie,
Here.
Mr. Burns, Mr. Hess, Mr. Thorpe,
Here.
Mr. Clemens, and Mr. Larkey, who just resigned.
All right. Item 5 on the agenda is to adopt January minutes. Can I get a motion for the adoption of the January minutes?
Second.
Mr. Burns makes a motion, and Mr. Tharp makes a second for the motion. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Awesome. All right, so old business is item 6. I do want to make a point regarding our bylaws. So section 6 on page 2. So if you look on section 6, page 2, any members absent from 3 consecutive meetings shall be placed in inactive status and not be counted towards the quorum requirements to conduct a meeting. So I just want to point this out because we only have 4 for today. Currently, we need to have 3 positions appointed by specific councilmen, and I am going to reach out to those councilmen this month so that we can get those positions replaced. I want to also introduce a necessary but minor amendment in section 1, article 2. And this is just an introduction. The next meeting will have the amendment. We need to replace the version where it says Envision Livingston. It says CMP means Livingston Parish Comprehensive Master Plan in its current form, version titled Envision Livingston. We need to remove that, and we need to adjust it to 2025 Livingston Parish Master Plan. We don't need to take a vote on this. This is just a recognition for the March meeting for this amendment. All right. So now item 7, 7A is Half. He's representing Drainage Master Plan. He's not here for today, so we're going to scratch that item. I'm going to skip over 7B and come back to it, so we're going to jump to 7C. At our last meeting, we introduced the community's concern with the water conditions. We had mentioned the town of Killian. We mentioned the water grades throughout Louisiana and how 2 of the areas were located in Livingston Parish. I do want to emphasize to the community and to our committee that our focus for today's agenda is to develop a plan to monitor and proactively address potential issues with the parish water system, whether they're issues that we're currently facing or even issues that may arise. So it's not to focus on a specific issue. It's more of in general for the entire parish, so we can make sure that we're as preventative as possible and making sure we have the best solution. The master plan of 2025 mentions 3 specific suggestions. 1 is creating a parish-wide water plan. 2 is combining services with existing private and municipals, and construction of new infrastructure is the 3rd one. We also suggested a 4th idea, which is creating a committee that at least is temporary and could be permanent to assist monitoring the water system within the parish. So these are 4 different suggestions that we have. And with that, I'd like to introduce a representative from the Louisiana Department of Health. If you don't mind stepping forward, introducing your name, your role, and any suggestions that you may have to share to help us to come up with a solution.
It's red? Yeah, good. Stephen Jubert, LDH Engineering Services Section Chief. So I was here based on invitation to kind of help you guys work out any any questions that you have or plans related to going forward. I heard that you mentioned the parish-wide plan. Definitely there is support for resiliency when you're grouping systems together, either by managerial support or physically connecting them. Those plans for resilient entities that weather changes in water compliance, and then also provide for best outcomes for public health. Definitely, if you have systems that are failing as relates to our water grade understanding, or their grades are suffering there, generally they're better suited with the support of others. You have Pillion here. That's an example of a consolidation by managerial support. They're not physically connected to anyone, but they become a part of a bigger entity that provides for support for that individual one. So there are a lot of positives to all of the different aspects there. I would say resiliency, public health is better supported by volumetric. You're consolidating customer bases to play into the common good of all of the parties. I'm here to support any questions in any direction. So I don't tend to lean one way or the other, but I can help you if you're leaning one way or the other to try to work through any of those details you may have. All right.
I do have an additional question.
Uh-huh.
So out of those 4 suggestions, creating a parish-wide water plan, combining services, construction of new infrastructure, and then creating a committee to monitor the water system within the parish. What do you think would be the most economical solution?
So it depends on where things sit. So you can consolidate something without tying it. So you can provide for the different systems under one management umbrella, and then that is consolidated. But when you create resiliency with connection, then that's a different economic cost supported there. So that may vary depending on where the systems sit, what goes into that. So that would take a careful engineering study or plan to develop whether that. Have you guys looked at that as an option, or just flushing out the potential, I guess?
We're kind of fleshing it out, but under one umbrella with the connectivity with the parish, the west side of the parish, you got Ward 2 water, City of Dillon Springs, Walker. You used to have some of the French settlement systems south of Port Vincent, and then you skip over to some smaller municipal systems, Coyell in the middle, Livingston, and there's some great vast land between those areas for connectivity. And then you skip over from Livingston and going on out Albany and 4th Ward, Water District north of Albany type of deal. And then you have diversion and used to be Killen. So I know we personally have a lot of water systems around Livingston Parish, maybe a management type of deal, but the connectivity part of it would be somewhat difficult, from my understanding, because of the vast distance between connecting the smaller systems. So maybe based on what you're saying is maybe do an overall managerial, I'm going to call it managerial system, right. Correct? That way you can, where one piece system suffers, the other part system supports it, correct?
Sure. There may be some options there where it's a hybrid of those two, which if they're logistically close, then you can physically connect them and build resiliency within that understanding. But then as one managerial voice there directing financing and money to the different issues, that means that everyone within that understanding that pays into that collective understanding benefits. And then you would have one governing voice to say where the needs are, or where the funding's directed based on the needs. So
are you aware of any systems that are functioning that way, that are like we are, a mix of private and
yeah, you ever heard of
municipality
Lawco Baton Rouge? Well, so Lawco Crowley, Lawco Eunice, DeQuincy, and Seward. So Lawco as a group has several systems throughout the states that are not connected. Magnolia is a similar group. So all of those have one umbrella where they're supported by one management structure, and then they're all a part of that umbrella. So Lawco is a good example. Magnolia is probably another example there.
I'm very familiar with Lawco.
Right.
So
right.
It's their systems. They go from anywhere from New Iberia
You know,
Where they have arsenic issues.
That's the one that I missed. So there's several, several.
They have unique, down there, they have arsenic issues. If I
They're-
remember correctly, we got pretty much solved now, but at the water treatment plant, that's been some years ago now.
Right. So each one, and that's what I offer. So in
Right.
that collective understanding, and I'm picturing the guy's face right now. There's a guy that's over treatment,
Mhm.
but the treatment is varied throughout those individual systems, and so
Jim Brew.
What's that? Say again?
Jim Brew.
Jim Brew used to be there.
Yeah, I don't know
Patrick
who's the new
Smoke
one.
is a younger guy that's there now, and I think he's over treatment.
Yeah.
But so the needs are unique to the individual systems, but they're managed by one guy that oversees treatment for the entire corporation. And so that there's a strong voice in that when you can consolidate that understanding to one group or one body leading that direction. And sometimes when there's a lot of voices and boards, there's pulls in different directions. But when you can funnel that, you're able to then direct to the support where it's needed within the collective. ALCO is probably your best example of systems that are not touching, but are under the same management umbrella. Magnolia is a good example too.
Right.
Yeah.
But looking from like a parish-wide, we'd have a mix of, like Magnolia now is down there, we have private, we have municipality run water, and there's not a governing body that would oversee all of those. Like, obviously, Magnolia Lanco is going to be responsible in their funding and everything. They can control and treat, what they can under their umbrella. But we're trying to not end up ever having to deal with what we've dealt with in Killian before, and trying to come up with somebody. And I'm curious if there's like, since we're talking about parish-wide, if you're familiar with any type of governing board within a parish that may be overseeing private water companies in some capacity as opposed, and also the municipalities that would be outside of their jurisdiction since it would be in incorporated areas. Is there anything that you're aware of that's functioning in Louisiana that way?
Not with that many variable pieces. So there's several examples though. I was telling before we started earlier of parish-related consolidations, which are actually paid for by the Water Sector Award, which so the state actually took some federal dollars and provided for the support for the physical connection, the infrastructure to tie systems together. So there's and a lot of those were related to administrative orders of failing systems, problems with compliance. There's one that was a positive example, and then a set forward by our criteria. We really tried to make so there was an advantageous application process for all types of systems failing or otherwise well performing. So Calcasieu Parish has one that their systems were all properly maintained individually, all under the control of the parish, but separate. And so the proposal by that parish was to put them together to make for a more resilient flow, improve some flows in different areas, and just make it more resilient as a whole. So they had the customer base already under their direction, but then in consolidating the financial structure there, and then also tying them directly together, they were able to make for a more resilient system. So what you're proposing there, it's going to have to be supported by a lot of corporation from all of those, because they would have to be willing to relinquish their structure for the one umbrella. So as it sits there, they all have their own governing control. There's some structures within the state now to remove control from systems that are failing, receivership and administrative, fiscal administrator when their systems are failing, and that's related to the water grade. So failing would be a DRF as scored by the state water grade. Those provide for some different avenues to kind of move control and direct better patch. But if you have well-performing systems, it's going to be based on their corporation. With they would have to see some support in wanting to be a part of a larger group.
So could you also speak to, we understand that we have quality water and then we have the health issues with the water, and at DHH, obviously you're mainly concerned with the health portion of that. Can you briefly walk us through, if we have a failing system, like what's the steps that DHH takes, and is it all the way up to basically shutting down the well?
So there are some conditions that would warrant us to put orders on water. We wouldn't necessarily stop the flow or shut it down in a way, but we would flag it. So the the worst flag you could possibly have on the system would be do not drink, which means that you have some function of water coming into homes, but it wouldn't be water that you could ingest. And so that would be based on compliance measures by the state that would judge the water in that way. Outside of that, you can have systems that have failing infrastructure that would be faced with various administrative orders if they're not compliant with state code. Ultimately, those orders sit there and earn penalties unless there's a catastrophic issue that provides for an emergency order, which I think of a good example of that. Julian was in that boat a little bit. Tallulah was another example where state of emergency was required. And so that just brings in another level of support there from the state. But outside of that, LDH compliance is it's time sensitive. It looks at orders that are open and compliant and then judges those periods out of compliance, and ultimately penalties are assessed. So, but we often tell water systems we don't want the money from your out of compliance. We'd rather you have that money to make the problem better. So oftentimes when compliance persists and they're not able to gain support with code or improve things, it's a financial reason behind it. There's not enough wherewithal or financing there to support them better than what they have. So sometimes problems will languish in that way.
Right, so it's letters and fines they can't pay.
Yes, in a way. Yes, sir. Oftentimes, and I think so I'll offer, and currently, not for lack of trying, there's a lot of sources out there for support, which if you follow the water sector and the commission there that doled out the initial federal funds that came into the state. Now the state is sponsoring state-funded rounds out of the state general fund that provides for systems to make improvements, but it's application-based. So if you're a failing system, then you'd have to have your engineer or someone come in to provide for a proposal in order to be graded, in order to seek to try to get some of that funding. Some of it requires an investment in kind match. Sometimes in most cases, unless it's waived, there's a 25% understanding that's put in by the entity. But if you are a enforcement case and you have compliance issues, then you're going to score higher related to that. Sometimes there's a waiver for the match. There's certain requirements that allow you to waive the 25% match. And if your problem is compelling enough, your application will score based on that. So if you have systems and they are facing that and they haven't tried approach that conversation for funding, that's a shame on them. There's potential out there.
So what do you think about, I mean, I love how Mr. Tharp had mentioned that we have different systems right now, and we're kind of looking for that connection between all of them. So one of my concerns is I want to make sure that the community is safe and, you know, they're happy with their drinking water. Another one is like economy-wise, is it going to be, you know, a little bit cost efficient? Because I don't want to go towards any kind of extra resources that's unnecessary. So what are your thoughts if there was a committee to not quite delegate or enforce anything, but just monitor the different systems to say, hey, look, you've scored a D, you know, what are you doing to fix this? What are your thoughts with that?
I think that is a positive thing, because sometimes when you have within parish boundary systems that are languishing on their own, and there's not someone that hire support, an official structure there to carry that voice in that small town or community or language on its own. So we're always looking for responsible parties, I would call it, to develop that conversation around those systems. So that is I would see that as a positive. Definitely, if you can see as a parish, Livingston Parish, and say, hey, these systems are within our boundaries. What can we do to support them, to make them better? And it may not be direct control, but then you have a body that fosters the conversation, and then maybe there is some general funding related to Livingston Parish that you guys can control, and you can direct in a way that benefits those systems, because those outlying areas that are not consolidated towns or cities, those are vestibles of the parish, and so it should involve your attention and your conversation to make it better.
Thank you so much thank you for coming. Do y'all have any other comments or questions? No? All right, thank you so much for
Yes,
sharing your
ma'am.
information. We really appreciate it. So next we have Mr. William Rusty Reeves from Louisiana Rural Water Association.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, council. I'm Rusty Reeves, Louisiana Rural Water Deputy Director, Training Coordinator. Been in rural water for 28 years. Operated a small public water system in Allen Parish for about 8 years before I went to work for rural water. I've heard all of your comments, your questions and stuff, and almost anything's possible. In each one of your systems, you may take a little different aspect. I'm gonna have to lean back to Stephen because I'm gonna throw some things out here because I'm bad about throwing things out, and he's gonna tell me, no, that don't fly, or shut up, or whatever. But you know, one of the options you're talking about was like a parish committee. But if that committee was put together and you had the working resources of that committees where you could pull from like District 2, or pull from Coyell, or pull from any of your communities, could they have received receivership for Killian?
We'll tag team.
Yeah,
So-
we're used to this.
With respect to receiver, that's usually the interim party. And so oftentimes that person that comes in to support in the interim cannot be a part of the final solution. So you always have to weigh whether if an entity would be better as a portion of the parish to join the parish. Then the receiver can't they can't double deal in a way. So they can assist in lieu of them then providing the outcome or being a part of a larger solution. So usually the receiver is just interim support, and maybe better enough to relinquish it back to the controlling party that had it before, or maybe that receiver then decides to take it in a different direction, now back into the hands of the party that had it previously. But then they would not be the one to carry.
They wouldn't receive it.
They wouldn't receive final.
But
Thank you.
And with that, we saying that, it would take, you heard me mention bringing your existing water system working together to come up with a plan, because you have 90 days to come up with a plan and of action. But you know, at that same token, and if the other system is willing to maintain ownership of it and willing to curve their ways and fall in line with what needs to be done to get it right, I'm sure the parish would like to see that system maintain its self-sufficiency in the long run. And then, you know, the parish-wide system, I've seen it work in a lot of places. Usually the thing with the parish-wide system is most people are going to buck and kick against it because they want their own independency, until about 5-6 years down the road, and the fellow who was so much against it, he's done went down the road somewhere else. And now they come in under more of a volunteer basis. You know, DeSoto Parish, they built a parish-wide system 20 years ago, and they've taken on privates, and they've taken on some publics and some nonprofit. Now, they have not taken on every system in the parish, but they did take on a bunch of the apartment complexes, the subdivisions and stuff like that there. That was privately owned. Now they still have the city of Mansfield, the city of South Mansfield. They still have a couple smaller water systems that's, you know, gonna do their own thing till somebody dies. I mean, that's just the way rural folks are. It's mine till I die and give it up. I mean, but I think all the ideas work, and I think you may have to look at some things. You may not be able to connect everybody together, but you may be able to put these 3 or 4 together, connect them together to help support one another during the tough times. And then eventually, I mean, come on, we all want to be our independent till we run out of people who want to be independent. And then we look to somebody else. And usually they come right to y'all because in essence, y'all are their elected official. And you franchise that area one way or the other, either through a public body or through a nonprofit deal or through a private company. So at the end of the ball game, it winds up on your table or something. And if you went out there and you already got 2 or 3 connected, and one of them say, hey, I'm out, you just absorb him into the other two. And you just move from there, because eventually, we may not see it in our lifetime, but eventually you're gonna cover them vast areas of no homes as quick as Livingston Parish is growing, on that end of the parish. I mean, I'd have never dreamed the Albany water system ever be no bigger than Albany is, but it's scattered out as it is now. It slowly just inches its way out there, every little addition, every little project addition. So, I think in reality, you're gonna be looking at a little bit of everything in your master plan going forward, but I think one of the biggest things, if you want to try to keep your people in your parish, if you can get your existing systems to work together, to collaborate for when one of these are struggling, to provide the management for it, even before it went to receivership. I don't know that Killian would have reached out, and I can't speak for the previous mayor, but if there would have been a mechanism out there that could have maybe helped guide them through some of the difficult things and had the resources to back it in there, I can't remember your name. Gerald, we was talking with Gerald, right off the bat, he mentioned a bill, a House bill. That House bill could have been directed directly towards Livingston Parish Long Range Plan Committee to provide assistance to correct or help correct the Killian water system. I mean, I've seen some strange things come out of Baton Rouge. I mean, I sat in a meeting one day, and Stephen's predecessors, I watched them tell them it's a $24,000 fine, and I watched the state representative, state senator get up and give them $12,000 in a grant. I said, I just seen the fine get half paid. I mean, you got to have a plan, and you got to have a solution. And you'd be surprised what you can get funded over there if you got the plan and solution put together. You just ask the right person for it. Because none of our representatives want to see any system fail. They even don't want to see a system fail. They rather you come to them and say, hey, can you help support this bill that's going to get us a $200,000, $400,000, or $500,000 to get Killian back up on his feet? It's just because in the long run, the people of Killian's going to pay for the water service, whether it's Killian operates it or Magnolia's, and that's the other thing. The water's going to cost more today than it did 40 years ago. And the more people we have paying into the pot, the smaller it gets per household, per unit, or whatever, so. And anything we can do from Real Water to help y'all in moving forward with any plan, we'll be willing to help y'all.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And we definitely will probably be reaching out to all of y'all again soon. Did y'all have any other questions or comments? Okay, and now we have Mayor Caleb Atwell from the town of Killian.
I'm just going to piggyback on what these two gentlemen say. And I will say probably the best thing you can do if you own a water system is listen to Mr. Rusty Reeves and listen to Mr. Stephen Joubert, because they deal with this at a macro level. And I think they've probably seen everything under the sun. Just in the year that I've been communicating with Mr. Reeves, he's told me all sorts of experiences and stories. As it relates to consolidation of Livingston Parish systems, before we were actually given the final recommendation by GOSEP as to what we were going to do with the Killian water system, myself and some of the other board members, in between the time of being elected and seeing the receivership through, we actually looked at it kind of like what you guys are doing, but we looked at it from kind of a regional approach from Killian, and we had the same problem that we saw. We've got Killian, which is a governmental entity, and then within the Killian city limits, there's a private entity called Diversion Water. Just outside the city limits, as it turns out, there was another community water system in Riverscape that was owned by Magnolia. So I think that's kind of, very, very, very similar. So we went to an organization called the LMA, and we were introduced to a lady Mr. Reeves knows pretty well. Her name is Leslie Durham. She's another one of the leading experts in the state besides these two as far as it comes to water systems. And the concept that she came up with whenever we sat her down in a room and we said, here's Killian, it's municipal, here's these two private entities. We know that a big push by the state is to consolidate systems. How do we do it? And the concept that she came up with was that you would create a nonprofit organization. The advantage to creating a nonprofit is that nonprofit is going to be eligible to go after the water sector funds and the grants that these larger private companies are not eligible to go through. You've got to get agreement between all of the water systems, though, just like he was telling. But you do have that incentive or that economic incentive to say, hey, you know, a consolidated system. Once you start consolidating systems, that's a huge score on being able to bring all of those grants together. So we came up with the solution. Leslie pitched it, but by the time we were coming in and having these conversations, it was too late for the Killian. It was pretty much too late for the Killian water system. I mean, this was, I think, a lot of minds had already been made up by that point. But like I said, that would be a suggestion to solve what y'all are doing, is to create a nonprofit, and you'd have to figure out how to make sure that everybody who's a part of this nonprofit still gets to have some say so in where the funds are going to go to. You'd have to do negotiating, but I think that a nonprofit umbrella that, you know, once you figure out that who's going to control what, you've actually got an umbrella in which you could do kind of what you're talking about doing.
Whenever you had spoke to her, did y'all already talk to Diversion and Magnolia, like, and try to conversate with them about the nonprofit? How compliant were they with that idea?
So we never made it that far, because she went and spoke to someone at you know, it was high up in the state, and was like, hey, I've got this idea, and they shot it down and were like, hey, the system was too far gone in the eyes of the state at that point to really thoroughly explore other solutions.
Do you mind if I Mr. Steve, do you mind, or Mr. Reeves, I'm not sure, or anyone, do y'all know, have y'all seen this before, like a nonprofit that kind of unites an area's water system?
Haven't directly, but what he said is correct in that some of the private entities don't necessarily qualify for funding. The way it's set up, they are not able to that way. So can't think of an example in the way that he described it.
Would there be any reason that these private entities or like any of these companies would be against it, do you think?
The company? No,
Like-
I don't. It's so it improves their bottom line to have that customer base within their structure. I don't think others joining that structure. Just depends on their. So I think towns take water, and I'll often the analogy I use is a cow that take the milk from, and the cow never gets fat. And so at some point, the cow's not going to give you any milk. So the example there would be, especially from a compliance standpoint, a betterment of public health, is water as a business. And oftentimes, water is not looked at as a business model, effective rate, structures in that way. And so corporations and businesses often do better than small towns that are just looking at this as a source of revenue without making investments back to where the money's coming from. So, but those takers on the private side, then they would have to mobilize their own capital financing to be able to take over what they would see would be good business opportunity. As far as it relates to the state on the public side, we're interested in consolidating systems, and we actually pay. There's a lot of different avenues where we can pay to support that. So a lot of the investment is free. Oftentimes it's an A system helping a failing system, and it's better because it's being that smaller system is now being gobbled up or taken in by the larger system, and that's at no cost to either of those. So to bring them together, oftentimes there's dollars, federal dollars and now state dollars, and then we even have a revolving loan fund where there's some opportunities that almost provide for no cost to put those entities together physically. I think his structure may be more managerially, which like you said with that nonprofit, I'm not super familiar with that. I don't know if you guys were close enough to tie it to anyone else. I don't know. That was a direct solution.
Well, because I looked at it from we looked at it from a geographic, just like within our own geography, and you could actually tie the Killian water system into the diversion water system and into
public and private.
yeah, it would have been close, but you also could have tied it into the water system into the Riverscape water system. So geographically, you could have connected all three. You could have run pipes to connect all three systems together.
I'm thinking as the private, the only advantage is what you described, private and public. That way, they wouldn't have qualified to be brought. Usually, public and supporting those being private. Private then brings in a structure which is like, hey, if your own capital or their investments in making. But they wanted to tie it in that way, like they would have to approach Killian. Killian would have to relinquish their control. Then they would do that consolidation, but it would be funded by Magnolia, not any public.
Yeah, so public, so lack of a better term, public to public, private to private, unless private buys out public. Roughly speaking.
Yes.
Type of
Properly
deal.
described that.
At this very
So you have-
elementary level.
They'd have to take them over as an investment. So that's
Correct.
a business opportunity. We're going to invest capital in order to bring them into our umbrella. The state pays for resiliency with the public, because that's a public dollars invested in. So a lot of examples of that to improve
Right.
compliance, public health, public.
Right.
That's the whole point of the nonprofit. Is the nonprofit serves as a bridge to where now you've got public and you've got private, and theoretically there's an advantage for both to come together with a partnership if they're willing.
Right.
Not as familiar with that, but
But the way it works most of the time, on a board,
Right.
assess the area, franchise a water district, you appoint a water district board that's gonna be over that area. Somebody buys out the privates, consolidate everything into one, or the money to buy out the privates. Calcasieu Parish for Calcasieu number 14, York's Water was right in the middle of it. J.R. Franks wanted $350,000. Parish put up the $350,000, bought J.R. out the water business. And they built a water district around it, used his existing customer base for the start off of the whole water district. Now they sell water to Calcasieu. Same thing happened up in Caddo Parish, the Blanchard water system. Expanded their water district, took on East Side and East Cove. One was a nonprofit and one was a private owned. Now since then, they've taken in a bunch of mobile home parks and everything in that area. But everything is always with a public body created.
Mhm.
And they can get way more funds than a nonprofit can.
Yeah, similar to what Ward 2 did years ago. When
Yes.
Ward 2 did their massive expansion in the early 2000s, they expanded to the south and they built it to small private little systems, expanded to the south and then expanded to the north. And they used the state revolving funds to do their expansion. And it was very wisely used at that point for improvements and expansion throughout that. And they, of course, they have a governmental body that oversees it, which is part of the parish council. So, yeah.
And then being a parish body, I'm not gonna talk about the ugliest thing in the world, but it works in some areas. They're able to put a bond issue out there if they need to.
Come to the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He's yelling in the back.
All right, being a parish body, if they needed to, they can go to, for a bond issue for maintenance if they needed to. In other words, if the customer base wasn't quite big enough, they could do that. I mean, things just seem to work better if it's a political subdivision, a public body, in the long run, because if the board gets stale, y'all have the control to put a new board in there. If it's a nonprofit, well, I got tired of doing it, so I'm not gonna show up to a meeting, and the next one gets tired of doing it, he don't show up to it. And we wind up with a bunch of them that have 2 board members running the whole show. So, I mean, it's just, if he's gonna, that is an idea that will work, but it really needs to be through a political subdivision, because now even the Livingston Parish Police Jury could back any action that they tried to take to get money through the feds or whatever, you know.
Right.
So, but the biggest thing is you basically would buy out them others, one way or the other. And that's what Calcasieu Parish done. They bought out A.R. Franks. Where else did they expand, Stephen?
You described it right. So it's the you described the private gobble, where that's the animal that lives as a private entity. But his analogy was the reverse.
Reverse
Yeah,
of
the
it,
public
yes.
the public entity is what lives. So private, smaller system bought out, then expanded to the parish. So Starks was one example that was private, to public, and then expanded to other areas of the parish within that
And
area.
you
of the
see,
parish.
Tabby #1 in the last 15 years, Stephen, has acquired 2 nonprofits and a municipality. And they actually operate in another parish than where these other 3 systems are. And they was able to get both state and federal funding for all 3 acquisitions. You know, I mean, one of them, they got an award for, they got the money to buy another system, and then the loan was forgiven. They applied at the right time, through the right process, but all the parties was willing at that time. That's the key thing. Everybody got to be willing,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes your customers become the willing charge over the board, and like in one of Sabine's situations, their customer base just says, you folks got to go. Somebody else got to run this water system.
So I smile because there's a lot of support with the failing understanding, and I think legislator each year, they continue to improve the receivership authority there, because then that provides for some force to remove or to make for movement on a failing system. So it gives more support to bringing in someone else to write, or those that have been in power could not handle it on their own. So that comes in with someone has some financial background there, and they're able to make good objective decisions, and it's not subjective to can't have our water system. We've always had it. It's memory of it's more sentimental and not driven by financial objective measures. So you can bring someone in that has some objectivity, and their common goal is just making things better. So receivership authority, I think each year the legislature provides for a different bill that just improves that. That's almost a force that to make some change.
Mayor Atwell. So, Mr. Mayor, I believe it's the consensus of this committee is that we don't want anybody to ever have to step into the position that you stepped into, newly elected and being handled at something. With the support documentation that you sent us, I mean, it's so easy to look back and know that we're talking about decades of neglect in the system over there. And so we're really trying to flesh out a way that we can pass down and hopefully codify something that will provide a help and assistance far in advance of this problem. And so I roughly know the life you lived with the water system through Killian over the last couple of years. But if you could put that to the side and think of, let's say you stepped into something that was not this far gone, and we're looking at, you're getting your C grades and like we're having some monthly issues where they're coming back and having to be corrected. how would you feel, as the mayor of Killian there for, basically some portion of the parish coming down there because, we're aware of the rating system and being able to step in and say, hey, look, let's talk about what's going on, and let's, maybe a group of people, on a committee or a board that can stay with their fingers on the pulse of maybe what monies are available, have direct relationships with people, at DHH, and like be able to step into somebody, because you, like most new mayors, step in and go, okay, how do you mayor? I think of Gerard Landry, he's 9 months into his first term, and Denham Springs gets 6 foot of water, and like, there's no book to pull off the shelf to figure out how to do that, right? And you had a very similar crisis that you've navigated well too, in my opinion. So I guess I'm asking is, from the seat you sit in, how would you feel about some governing body of some sort? Not speaking about with some kind of authority to force you. You're obviously your own municipality, but to be able to say, hey, we realize you have a problem. That problem's for your people are our people, and we want to help you work through this.
I think a lot of this is going to depend on who's coming. We're doing who's going to come and talk, who's coming and talking to me, and how are they approaching me? Because at that point, if I've got a C grade, it's got to be voluntary. Also, you got to take into account personality differences. So I've got the type of personality that when I jumped in as mayor, the first place I went to the LMA. I went to Rural Water Association, and I was like, help me, So a lot of that's just going to depend on the personality of who's sitting in that chair, and then how the idea gets brought to them and pitched to them in the first place. Because I think a lot of people do want to come and they want to do good, and it's all going to be about the approaches. Are you coming in and saying, no, you're going to do it, or are you going to do it? Same conversation we just had with the nonprofits. Could it work? It might, but it's going to depend on, one, the approach, and then two, you got to really structure and organize it in a way that makes sense and account for what do you do when board members show up? What do you do when someone leaves? All that would be like new territory that you would navigate, and you'd really have to get some really smart people to put some thought into it in order for it to be successful. But ultimately, I do think there should be, the parish should have some sort of committee or some sort of intermediary that can go, for example, like I don't get paid, so everything I do is volunteer. So having the parish or having somebody be the actual person who's going and who can go during the day down to the legislature and talk to legislators, who can go sit down with Steve or Rusty or some of these other people who only operate within business hours. I think that's really, really advantageous for me, as long as I can build that relationship with that committee.
Right. I mean, I think that's kind of what we've discussed, right? Something along those lines of to basically, like not out to penalize, but to steer and to keep, and maybe some motivation, right? Because like pretty much everybody, especially like you have more work than you can do every day, right?
Right.
I mean, you literally do, and you made the right contacts, but not everybody is that proactive, or maybe they got some bad advice from someone, and having some people that are able to come down and say, hey, yeah, do you realize that this person had this issue? Let's go talk with them, and making those contacts, being those connectors that can accelerate the repair and get the people what they really deserve.
Yes, you're correct, because one thing that I was able to do is, just because I have been involved in various issues around the parish, carbon capture being one of them, I was able to pick up the phone and immediately after being elected and saying, hey, who do I call to go get that? And that networking, even one of the reasons I think we were able to manage that receivership as well as we did was because I'll give you an example. We had a neighborhood go overnight without water because the receiver they weren't from this area. Well, I had gone to a networking event that this man to the left over here put on. I pick up the phone. I was like, hey, like you're operating in the same area of me. Who do I call so that I don't have these people go over? And I said, it's not going to be mine for forever, but who do I call whenever I need to do that? So that type of networking, you know, I think a lot of other mayors may have struggled a little bit if they were, especially if they were brand new off the street, which happens, you know, all the time in Livingston Parish. You just get regular citizens that step up because they see a problem, then they get in and they're like, how do I do it? So yeah, I think that would be great.
Politics, right? Like people change out and they start over without institutional knowledge. And, you know, we've got Steve, that like, these are careers. Like, these are the people that have been doing it forever. And like, when you know them and you can get things done, you can get the correct information, you trust them, and you can go forth through that. It's a very hard thing to do. Administrations change it over and not being able to hold on to that institutional knowledge. And like, the misinformation is out there, right?
Yes, it is.
You know, and it's because what you brokered and did down there is going to get clean water to your people, and I applaud you for doing that. And I personally think it was the correct move with what y'all have there. Not that that matters at all, but it's also something that could have been done 10 years ago. And but not disparaging on the previous mayors, but like, they didn't get the pieces of the puzzle that you got. And, you know, and maybe if there was some way that assistance could have been provided and accepted, that, you know, like, the problem may have never got as bad as it did.
I think you're probably correct.
I appreciate it.
Thank you all so much for adding your knowledge and contributing to our solutions. Let's see. So the item for this was a recommendation of a parish-wide water plan. I feel like it might be too soon to kind of recommend that. Just looking at the master plans that the parish is coming together with, which we're about to go over in just a few minutes. However, I think Mr. Tharp's on point with, because I mean, I agree fully with what you're saying as far as creating a committee to add support throughout the water systems, and even eventually maybe even contributing to a nonprofit, or trying to figure out, hey, should we go ahead and find out more about a plan? But just going ahead and establishing a committee to initiate any ideas going further. That way we can dedicate more time and ideas to make sure that this is preventative. Would y'all like to recommend that, or should we do some more research and recommend it at the next meeting?
After listening to all these distinguished people in the audience, and I guess really we should be pushing for a parish-wide water system. And you want to get a committee to start working on that and writing letters, and that might be where we need to go. I think that solve a lot of problems. You got all kind of water systems. You got French Settlement water system down there too. That's pretty big, isn't it? Yeah. And I understand they've been having water problems. Besides Killian, any other water systems down in that area?
In the immediate vicinity of Killian, besides the three that I mentioned, you've got Carter Plantation, and then you've also got Springfield, which is directly north. Those are the only two water systems that I'm aware of besides the ones directly around Killian. And then on the other side of literally on the other side of the bridge of Highway 22, you've got Bruce's Harbor, which I'm not sure if they're French Settlement or if they're their own water system, but I know they just had a new well put down there a few years ago.
So how many private water systems, run by public entities, are there down in South Livingston? Not including Springfield and Albany.
So you have, just the ones that I know of off the top of my head, you have French Settlement, you have Diversion Water, and now you have Magnolia in all three different private areas working in that same region, same vicinity. Yeah.
I think that's the goal we should be working towards. I would make a recommendation that someone pen a wonderful letter stating that.
So I want to make sure, so we're going to recommend to establish a committee. So we're going to write a letter to recommend to establish a committee to focus on a parish-wide water plan? Or how do y'all want to word that?
System.
Water system. Does that sound correct?
It does. I was just gonna make a suggestion. I mean,
Okay.
I'm all for that too, parish-wide water plan, but first step would be oversight committee we just talked about. And then, I mean, this is supposed to go into, for our master planning. So the direction, first steps first, oversight committee, then moving to a parish-wide water system. I mean,
That's what I was.
that would seem like the first logical step to have the oversight based on what I was.
So to establish an oversight water committee to eventually move for,
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I was
so maybe we
gonna
can leave it at establish an oversight water committee. And then from there, once we propose that water committee, they can do the research and move forward with nonprofit, parish water system and so forth.
Well, let me just make a suggestion. Let's absorb what they have in tonight. We all know, we all in agreement what we think we need to put into the master plan, or suggest we put in the master plan. Let's absorb what we heard tonight and all that, and then come back next meeting and put a good formal proposal together that we're not putting together here at the middle of the meeting type of deal. But I think we're all under the same idea up here that it needs to move that direction. I'm just suggesting.
I'm wondering, do we need to establish an oversight committee? That's what we do. That's the role of the master plan review committee. Why can't we do that?
Right. We're going to be directing to be put for the master plan to be updated, and these are suggestions to go forward into the master. That the first thing would be an oversight committee, second would be parish-wide community systems.
So this committee would be comprised of this committee, or
No,
outside this commission?
I think it can be. I mean, if you want to ask the council, your district councilman, if you can be appointed to it, if it winds up passing. But I don't think it's required to. I think it would be an extra support, because with the master plan review committee, we need to focus on, because they have, in the master plan, there's 5 specific goals. And with those 5 goals, there's roughly about 5 objectives within those goals, which I'm going to go over in just a few minutes. But I think we'll have our hands filled with everything. And I know the last meeting you mentioned that infrastructure is a huge issue, and
Big
we need to
time.
focus on that
Right.
too. So
Very big
I think
issue.
our
Water,
hands,
and water being infrastructure.
yeah, I think our hands will be filled with all the other goals and just trying to like make sure everything is monitored. And in fact, in our master plan, it does say that the master plan review committee is an implementation committee to help implement the master plan. So our focus should stay around all the other goals, but kind of just filter into that oversight of the water committee, and they can maybe report to us and just give us the information of, hey, here's the nonprofit information. So
So my question, back to another committee independent of this committee, who's going to appoint that committee to represent this committee?
well, the committee would be established will actually be appointed by the council. So my envision for that committee would be some like managers of the existing water districts, part of the mayors who are involved with water districts, whoever liaison for, say, Magnolia Diversion. That
Okay.
becomes the committee of record for the oversight, because those are guys who have the
Okay, I got
knowledge.
that. I got it.
Yeah, stakeholder, thank you. I was thinking of the word, I couldn't remember it. A stakeholder committee, pretty much. That's what I would envision, because they have knowledge, they
So our
know these guys,
recommendation is
they know
only,
these.
our recommendation is only to create a independent water committee. That's what we're doing. That's the recommendation we have. Is that correct? Okay, all right.
So do we want to go ahead and make that recommendation so we can propose it to the council at their next meeting? Or do y'all want to go ahead and hold off a little bit so we can?
I motion that we table it and come back with a more
Okay.
fully fleshed
Okay,
way that we want to present it.
A more finite.
okay.
Yeah.
Would y'all be against doing an extra meeting this month so we can try to get this done as soon as possible? Okay, so we're going to table it. We'll look at another date to do an extra meeting for this month, and then hopefully get that in for the next council meeting, not this upcoming one, but the next
Mayor
one.
has to go planning. We report to planning.
All right, so now we're going to circle back to item 7B. And 7B, if you look in front of you, it says page 66, implementation of the CMP. And I want to thank you guys all again for coming. We really do appreciate it and all your information. So page 66 of the implementation of the CMP. So this is the tracking progress. In that big packet of the comprehensive master plan, there was a lot of information. I took the weekend to read the whole thing and highlight specific parts to it. But these are some highlights that I think we need to focus on. The tracking progress, so they're saying that, and this is summarized, very summarized, broad goals into measurable objectives, which they've already done this. They have their specific goals, which we'll go over in just a second. And then from there, they branched out to measurable objectives. They also mentioned assigning responsibilities, having committees. So that's why we also emphasized the water committee, because they said they want implementation committees. One example is our committee, another one could be the water committee, and so forth. And then they want to use mechanisms of reassessment and adjustment. So these are different focuses that we need to gear towards with all of these different plans that are coming about. In the master plan, they do have the plans that are working on currently. That's why it may be too soon to push that wide parish water system. That's why it's good to start off with that committee first, because currently they have their goal 1 is a focus on transportation. So they were focusing on the master plan for transportation. They said at this current time, they're just seeking funds. They might be further than that, but when they created this, they were seeking funds. Goal 4 was a focus on infrastructure and drainage. They have the drainage master plan, which half was going to come speak. Hopefully they'll come next meeting.
They've
But-
had several, as y'all know, they've had several vignettes regarding it, so they're making pretty good progress, which I'm trying to get them here to come give a presentation.
Okay. And they actually, it's anticipated for them to complete this in 2026, this year. There is an idea for the master plan for sewage, which is currently seeking funding. And then goal 5 is community amenities, such as the hazard mitigation plan, which it says anticipated to be completed in 2026, and the asset management plan. Now, I've got all of this information from this right here. It's literally just a summarized version. And this highlights the goal areas and objectives, and then the strategies they want to go towards to get to those objectives. And I think over the next month to the next meeting, I would like us to look at these and see what we can focus on. So if you notice goal 1, it says the whole goal area is transportation. Their objective, they have 3 different objectives. Well, they have several goals within the transportation, but for the goal 1.1, they want to focus on efficiency. They want to foster and complete roadway network. Strategy is developing the comprehensive traffic management plan. For that next objective is developing a comprehensive street plan and zoning code. And then that next strategy is expanding transit services. So I would like us to take a look at this and just dive more into it and see what we can propose that's realistic and measurable, that we can contribute. So so goal 2 is land use and housing. Goal 3 is economic development. And they even dive into preserving like green areas, like what we can do. I think I saw something on, what was it? There was an area in here where they were suggesting like even, not quite gardens, maybe a community garden, I think I saw in the master plan, but just different things like that. I'll have to dig in and see what page that was in. I don't want to a lie about that. I know it's somewhere in there. Goal 3 was economic development. Goal 4 was infrastructure and drainage, which is a huge, huge deal, but they're focusing on that right now. And then goal 5 was community facilities, amenities, and services. Oh, I think it's right here. On that last page, objective 514 strategy was identifying, community gardens. Oh, that's a community feedback. The feedback from the community was they were wanting community gardens. But certain things like this, even providing workshops, we can, see what the parish is doing to reach these goals and see what we can suggest for the parish to push, or what committees we can create to push these specific agendas. But that's just for y'all to look at, and to hopefully we can bring something on board for the next meeting, so we can, make this year productive as much as possible. So item 8, I'm going to go ahead and move on. So that was just an introduction just to show you guys. Item 8 is new business. We don't have any new business currently. Item 9 is open comment and future discussions. Do y'all have anything you want to comment on or add for our next meeting as of right now? No? Okay. And item 10 is our closing. I do want to emphasize the purpose of this committee, and so you're going to see, as a teacher, we like to focus on the objectives and making sure our goals are met. So before every meeting and after every meeting, I like to try to state the purpose of this committee, just to remind everybody that we need to ensure that our parish and this master plan is aligned. So as we notice any issues or misalignments, we act as the Planning Commission's sidekick in making recommendations to them. So we also act as the community's voice and platform. That's a strong, huge asset of this committee, is to make sure that our community is heard. So we do invite anyone in the community to voice concerns. Anything discussed in this committee must be in regards to aligning our parish in the master plan. But that's everything for today. As long as there's no closing comments, anyone motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Right. We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, all opposed? No. All right, this is our February meeting in 2026. It's adjourned.